A motion to accept the minutes of our previous meeting,
So moved.
seconded,
Second.
okay. And any additions, corrections, deletions to the minutes?
The only thing
Yeah.
I had was that I thought that there was someone on the Zoom with us in the last meeting that was
Was.
listed as present. So I can just go back and find out who that was and add them, but that was it.
There was somebody on this,
Yeah, it's a woman I first.
besides Marilyn.
Nancy,
Oh,
Nancy Zemblock.
Probably was Nancy.
No, I don't think Nancy was on last month or last meeting.
I thought she described the status of the video, or am I thinking the meeting before that?
You could be right. I'm confused now that you mentioned it. Maybe it was me who didn't come and she did. They all blend together after a while.
I usually don't capture the people who are not part of Recalc. So that could be the
Yeah.
reason.
Right, because we're doing the attendance is the attendance of the
Right.
membership.
And then when you submit the meeting minutes, it just has a section where you put others present.
Yes, yes.
Then I would be listed and anyone else who was on the Zoom. So I can just go back and add those people, but that's not like technically part of meeting minutes, so.
So Ron Assini, please, is noted is in attendance.
In the house.
Is
Thank,
in-
thank goodness, I didn't want to do
He's in
the.
his house. Or something.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm not there today. I hurt my back and
Ooh, that's a very good reason. I hope it wasn't playing pickleball. though.
no, it wasn't. It was,
Okay.
I think I picked up a ball and that's all I did.
Okay, so seeing no corrections, except noted that it's going to be listed both staff and people who are in attendance other than the committee members. Okay, so that will be done. And so I'll take a vote now, roll call vote in favor of accepting the minutes. Nora Bucko.
Yes.
Okay, John Parsons,
Yes.
Ron Assini,
Yes.
John Sasso,
Yes.
Michael Colton.
Yes.
Mark Doxer.
Yes.
And John O'Neill, yes. Okay, so getting right into the agenda, we're talking about the Active Living Committee Summary Report, which John has edited, and we got an executive summary. I don't know if people had a chance, since it just came out this afternoon, to see it.
Yeah, I apologize. I actually took a turn for the worst a week and a half ago, and I have not been able to focus on it. So I finally, in the last day or so, just tried to get through the main summary, which I think is where a lot of the major questions were anyhow. The one thing, well, a couple things. One that was critical was kind of right up front, giving a primary recommendation, which was, hey, we need to do something for the senior facility like now. And so I tried to emphasize that at the very beginning. And then also kind of walking through some of the recommendations and pieces that we had talked about. So I've only updated the initial section there. I still need to go through the other sections. There were some comments that I have not had an opportunity to really update. But I think in terms of at least what we talked about the last time, I think the summary recommendations are kind of in alignment. But by all means, more feedback if there are other questions. And I know I apologize, it didn't come out till today, so that's my bad.
In addition to members at our last meeting, Council on Aging submitted something and staff.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Council on Aging piece was more of a statement of kind of alignment, what pieces they thought were important or not important. I'm relatively confident. I can go back and look through it again, but I think what I've put in the summary are pretty much in alignment with that. the staff memo that Jenna sent, I did go through that. I think it's worth a discussion. I wasn't entirely sure how to add that into the summary report. I thought there was a lot of really good suggestions in there, particularly around the concept of Reading Recreation and some of the needs and how, you know, an intergenerational center could kind of facilitate some of that. But I wasn't entirely sure how to wrap that around because we really didn't cover much of that in our discussions. It wasn't, I went back to the survey just as a sanity check. We didn't really ask those types of questions either. And they weren't things that came up in any of the forums. So I felt a bit uncomfortable trying to bring too much of that in because I didn't think it was really, you know, something that we've spent a lot of time on. I think it's great information. I think it's very supportive of the types of things that, you know, a more comprehensive center could support. And without a doubt, the things that staff raised in there, particularly around, you know, the needs to, you know, not have to rent school buildings on the weekends or at nights or whatever. I think those are all very relevant pieces. I just wasn't sure to what extent I could bring it in. So I've certainly opened that up for other people to have their thoughts, but that was my only comment.
On that, we had in our earliest meetings, John, talked about the needs of the problems recreation had, even finding places.
We did, yes. No, I know we did, and I don't see any reason why, in thinking about it logically, we wouldn't consider those issues in a larger scope type of approach. But I just don't think we spent enough time on it to really provide an intelligent enough comment on, okay, well, how could we actually incorporate that? I definitely think it's worthy of further discussion and planning. I think it folds nicely into what I call the ICC, if you allow me to use that acronym for the moment, so that I don't have to say it 10 times fast. I think it's a really nice thing to bring into that. And there's a lot of good detail in there that I think the town as a whole would agree makes sense to try to. We did hear that the town said, let's find ways to incorporate all the things that we are doing in this sort of stuff. So without a doubt, I think it aligns with it very nicely.
See, and I also think it answers some of the things that did come up in a couple of the forums around the fact that we already have enough facilities, you know, and the people, at least two people specifically referenced rec, you know, why can't we be using some, you know, some of their activities and resources, and the library came up. So that's why, in my mind, it probably would be helpful if we could. And maybe right now, I would open it because.
But this is, if you allow me, I'm sorry, I'm still suffering here. If you allow me, this actually proves kind of the reverse, which is we need an intergenerational center because we aren't able to get these other facilities to support the needs that, you know, I'm going to
Well,
use.
that's what I meant. That's
Right,
exactly what
right,
I meant.
exactly, right. So it's kind of, it's the opposite, because what I heard was we have all these other facilities and all these other programs. Why do we need a standalone? Why do we need to invest more money into this? And the answer is, well, it's not that we have all these other things. We've been borrowing and stealing kind of where we can. All right, I'm gonna lose it here. And we haven't been able to execute on the programs that you know people do want. So yeah, I agree. It's definitely this is how we can use that as another leverage point to say we have another huge set of identified needs here that aren't really being directly met.
To me, it's kind of like a delicate balance. On one hand, we don't want to de-emphasize at all the need for the seniors. You know, we've already come out and said that's the primary need, and we want to make sure that happens. And yet, on the other hand, I think it can help that argument if we frame it properly, the fact that there aren't alternatives for anyone. And of course, for seniors, we know it's inadequate anyway.
So let me just, two comments. One is, on the second piece of that, maybe the point that you're making would be a valid thing to include. And I'm only saying this because I haven't spent much more time than reading the report that Jenna sent. If we could truly validate that in some way, if we could actually, come up with a more in-depth assessment of that, then maybe the additional verbiage of, and we have actually looked that there are the other services and programs and supports that are being done in town are in fact being, done in facilities that are, being, rented out or used, as possible. And therefore, they're missing kind of the ability to have some consistent approach and having hours available during the day and other things as well. So we could say that. I just don't, again, I'm not saying this isn't true. I just don't know if we have enough information to really stand behind that at the moment. But relative to the first question, I did modify the very beginning of this to make it crystal clear that our intent up front is senior center, senior needs, immediate term. So I think,
well done.
I'd like to hopefully agree that we've all buried that hatchet enough. But by all means, if there's more that we can do, please let us know. We can add that in. But I heard that loud and clear from everybody, and I don't think anybody in this committee agrees, thinks differently. So
I'm actually anticipating the town meeting discussion, and a broader community discussion. And so I think it would be helpful if staff could go, give us more actual hard data to be able to anticipate some of the questions. But Michael and then Mark.
So one thing, I did look at Reading Rec, and the programs for adults, whether it's seniors or anybody, are only in the evening, because that's the only time you can ever get this other space that we're talking about in town. And that's not the appropriate time for seniors activities. That it really should be during the day, morning and afternoon. And there's nothing that rec can offer the adult community during the day.
Yeah, I think that would be great though, for that to come from the rec.
I think that's in their write-up. I only read it quickly this afternoon.
Yes, but to nail it down, like John was saying, we got a lot of hands up. That would be, that would be helpful.
Yes, yeah, we can provide a little bit more detail.
The only other thing I wanted to say is what rec can offer is very limited at the moment. So even that. So.
Right, in the schools, we can't get into the schools until after 6 p.m. on the weekdays. The schools take priority over all of the programs that are in the schools, and we do pay a fee to the schools on a yearly basis too. So, if we were to take some of the costs that we pay the schools and put that back into a potential community center and help, operate and fund this place, is where we were coming from as well in the memo. So a lot of different moving pieces and just our opinions, and from being around for so long and other people being in other towns like Somerville and Walpole, and then obviously the wealth of information we've received from going to other centers, senior centers and community centers. So
Mark, and then then it'll be John Parsons and then Marilyn. Okay. So
Cool. Thanks. So a couple thoughts. One, I think to the extent we can find some things that are supportive of the discussion related to other facilities, other uses, I think that's great. I think that the appendix can be a place where a lot of the stuff can end up. We can make some reference to it, but the appendix is a fine place to kind of hold it, to make sure it's there. I think we want to be careful not to try to solve kind of every single problem here. I just pulled up the survey that's going to be done for Simon's Way. And one of the questions they're proposing right now is, what are your top priorities for improving the quality of life in Reading? And it goes through affordable housing, commercial development, cultural arts, open space, recreation, senior services and senior center, other. So I think to the extent that it helps the story of there's no place to go, that's great. To the extent it says, let's open it up even more broadly, I think the notion of, I call it 24/7, slight exaggeration, but why can't we use a facility all the time? Be a great municipal asset. I think that's wonderful. Does that take care of all the needs that I think people are starting to talk about for a community center? No, I don't. And I just want to be careful. You know, we're going to get a good shot,
Right.
one shot. Let's make sure we shoot it the way we want to shoot it.
John Parsons?
Two things I'd like to throw out there while I'm got the floor or whatever you want to call it. An awful lot of people at the senior center keep complaining. One of the biggest problems is there's no programs at night. So I don't know why Reading Rec thinks seniors don't want to go out at night. The second thing I'd like to just throw out there for what people may or may not think about it, or whether it's got a whole lot of worth or not. It seems to me we talk about an intergenerational center, but at one time the term multi-generational center has been thrown out there. And I see those as two very different things. And I know I'd support one, but I wouldn't be strongly in support of another. So I don't know how other people would feel about that.
Could you explain how you see the differences, John?
To me, an intergenerational center is there are going to be programs that are going to match seniors with younger people. A multi-generational center is the building will have the ability to do different things.
And which was the one that you, I think I know, but which is the one you would support?
The multi,
Okay, yeah.
because I'm not so sure seniors want to, you know, I mean, we love children, we love teens and all this and that, but I'm not so sure that we want to go somewhere and, you know, interact with them all that much.
Okay.
I see his point. So it's dedicated space.
Hold on, Ron, sorry, but Marilyn had her hand up
Oh, sorry.
and you had,
Okay.
okay.
Thank you. I echo what John Parsons was just saying. I don't know why anyone would think that the seniors don't want to go out at night. I quote from our study, 51% of age 60 to 69 said that they would like the facility being open evenings and on weekends. And that was among their top 5 priorities when given a list of 12. 44% of those aged 70 to 79 said the same. And when they got over 30, it does go down to 30, but that's a third of the people who are over 80 want evening and weekends. And I certainly throw myself in this group, since at the moment I'm totally excluded, and I won't get back up on that soapbox. You've all heard it a million times, but it's not an inclusive facility as long as we do not have evening and weekend hours for seniors. Second point is, I haven't seen a copy of the staff suggestions. I wonder if that could be shared with the Council on Aging, just so we know the full range of ideas that are being discussed. That would be helpful. And last point is just on the terminology. The only term that was used in the survey was community center with designated blah, 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 blah. ICC now. Never did we ask anyone about a multi-generational center or an intergenerational center. These are words we've brought to the discussion post-survey, which doesn't mean we can't discuss them, but we have nothing in the survey to support either word as things stand right now, unless it came up in one of the focus groups. One of the things we don't have from UMass is thorough write-ups on any of the focus groups. We just have sort of anecdotal comments that they pulled out and compiled. But those are my 3 points. Thank you.
And I just,
Okay, Ron, and can you make sure, Jenna, that the council gets the staff?
oh, yep, and I did send it along to the Council on Aging.
Oh,
the
okay.
Agenda and everything for tonight, so it should have included my memo as
No,
well.
I didn't see it in tonight. I didn't have time today to read
Oh, okay.
through it all, so sorry, I missed
I
it.
sent it this morning.
Thank you.
Okay. Ron?
Yeah, what I was going to say. But,
Yeah, and I
It's
just
okay.
wanted to respond.
It's basically echoing other things that they were saying as well too. So just want to reiterate that what the request is that the senior center is open. The center, the community center, whatever we call it, multi-generation, has hours and space dedicated in the evening as well too, for seniors.
Yeah, and I don't think that Michael's point earlier was to say that we didn't think that adults come out at night. It's actually quite the opposite, because that's all rec can run is at night programs. So he's saying that rec could offer more things to the seniors and multiple populations, tots, whatever, if we had the indoor space. That's what you were saying, right?
That's it. I was
Okay.
just gonna make that point. No, no, no.
Seniors don't come out at night.
And Jenna, the other one was, I just want to capture it as well too, was you believe the Reading Rec needs office space as well too.
Right.
To the senior center space as well too.
Yeah.
So one additional point I'd like to make is to do some of that additional programming at whatever hour, daytime or night, actually probably requires more staff.
I think we've been, at least we've tried to be pretty consistent about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just want to just bang that nail
Yeah,
one more time.
no, can't say it enough. Can't say it enough.
One quick thing. So, Jenna, is this the first time that we're not quite fully staffed? How close to fully staffed are we actually now at Pleasant Street?
Well, recreation is hoping to get our full-time program coordinator. It's not officially approved, but we're asking for it. So that would be huge for the recreation division. And then the senior center, the last piece right now is our full-time clerk who starts on Monday. And then that volunteer coordinator position that's funded through ARPA. So
So we're going to be
as far
kind
as
of at,
FTEs on Monday, we're good.
yeah, so this is kind of the first time in,
Pretty much since I've been here, 11 years.
terms of actually getting even what was envisioned.
Right.
So it's completely agree that it requires more staffing to do more programming. But I happen to know that there's a lot of planning going into it. It's not a matter of just saying, oh yeah, we need 8 people or 10 people or whatever. Looking at different facilities around us, thinking about how we're going to operate is actively being discussed. And I just want to be careful that everyone is like, oh no, you're going to have to triple your budget before you do anything. I don't think that's accurate. In fact, I know it's not accurate. And I also think that in the discussions in here about 501c3s, and I was interested in your comment on pickleball, many of the a couple of senior centers that I visited, because I only visited a couple of them formally, raise a lot of programming money through their charitable fundraising activities.
That's not my experience.
So I can tell you that the 2 local ones, Linfield and Stoneham, do that. And in fact, in Linfield, they had the people at the thrift shop were competing with one another to see who was going to make their quota. That's what I heard them talking about.
Right, but when
And
you say,
I asked them how much money they raised.
Yeah.
They said a ton. And I said, what do you use it for? They said, that is a lot of our programming money. Comes
right,
from
by
this.
programming and staff are 2 different things.
What I'm responding to is this discussion of, oh, the budget has to quadruple.
Oh,
Okay,
sure,
and there's a staff
sure.
piece and
Mhm.
there's a program piece, but a lot of the programming piece, as I understand it too, is related to having people at the right place at the right time. I just want
Oh, yeah, the
to-
programming
it's
side.
being
of it,
discussed. how
all
to
sorts
do
of
this.
things, because I could see different civic groups or businesses sponsoring different programs.
Absolutely.
I think that would be,
Absolutely.
it's good publicity for them, tax write-off,
It's great for the
and
community. It's
great
all
for the community.
opportunities.
Yeah.
But it needs to be kind of a planned
Right.
activity in terms of how to do it.
It's incredible what we've been able to do with not having fully staffed senior center and fully staffed rec, and even the veteran services officer wasn't full-time.
I would have, the fact that there was, when I read the Chronicle and it highlighted the fact that there weren't additional FTEs except for those 2 that you just mentioned, 2 part-time becoming full-time. I said, missed opportunity maybe if they had said, 6 months into the budget year, we're starting off, or, another part-timer, that, because once something's in, it's harder to get out. And yeah, people would raise questions, but you can't make the case for the need early enough. But I see John Sasso and then back to Maryland. So John Sasso.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up quickly on this. So, I mean, obviously, we have been banging the drum about operational budget as well. But I do believe that, and I agree with Mark, that, we haven't necessarily, we Recalc haven't necessarily been focused on that per se. Our focus has been more on the facility side. I think our comments have always been along the lines of, just because you build a building, don't forget about the other side. The other comment I would make is that I've never, at least in my perspective, I was never believing that, you're just going to say, okay, we're going to open the building tomorrow. We're going to hire 10 new staff. This is just not going to happen. Not because of the fiscal, but because of actually organizationally and, being able to, digest that and make that work. So any growth that's going to come in terms of the building and the staffing and programs is going to come over time, because there's, you just have to, I mean, anybody, management 101, you're going to go through the process of figuring out what your needs are. You're going to plan it out. You're going to try certain things, and you're going to, make those investments once you have a definitive answer. And yeah, the comments and points you made about different opportunities for people to, whether they rent space, whether they sponsor programs, whether we get other funding sources, a nonprofit to be established. Another community is Winchester. If you look in their site, I think their entire center is run nonprofit or something to that effect. They have a group, if I remember correctly, that does all of their stuff separately. So I do think that's a huge opportunity, but it's certainly something from a town perspective that we can't actually force to happen. So, that's something we're going to have to figure out. But I do believe if that's possible, it would also help facilitate expansion of programs and try things that, maybe you decide, hey, this isn't going to work, let's do something different. So those are the types of things that you can do with those sorts of funds. And I would not expect town meeting or the budget to be able to be expanded instantaneously. It's something that's going to happen over time, and I think is going to require some planning. And I expect Elder Services in the town is working on those things. We just have to make sure the things that we recommend, if there are explicit impacts, we should just highlight them.
Marilyn?
I'm sorry, one other quick thing, just to your point, John, I'm sorry that you also mentioned, I would agree, at a minimum, we should take whatever input we have on these sorts of things and add them to the appendices and attachments. I was certainly doing that anyhow, so I was absolutely going to do that. If there is additional information that we can pull out of there that we can add in as a rationale for certain needs, I'm happy to add it.
Great. Marilyn?
I just wanted to remind people that we also have the trust fund interest that is earmarked for things like programming. I don't believe that we can fund employees, but we can continue to do what we do, which is things like pay for nicer dinners, things like that, special events, entertainment, and so forth. So we're here to help.
And also the healthcare trust fund, which can pay for like the medical transportation and I think some health aid assistance. I'm wondering, I always wondered what, on the brief time I was on the Council on Aging a number of years ago, if additional flexibility, because health is pretty hard, and could that, and it was a sizable amount of money and you don't want to expend it all. I'm not making that case, but to the extent that there's more flexibility perhaps there, that might help as well.
Right. But John, the Council on Aging doesn't have any authority over that particular trust fund.
Well, Mark just raised his hand.
So it's under the Commissioner of Trusts that does have discretion over that.
Yeah.
And you do have a select board representative who is that commissioner. So, and I have been trying to explore this issue, kind of what are those boundaries, or can they expand a little bit? It is related to health, it is related to need, but there may be opportunities there. I did ask specifically, could we pay for health services at a senior center, as an example? That hasn't drawn a lot of support yet, but I'm sure that there's a little bit more pushing and pulling to happen.
Maybe, blood pressure clinics, those kinds of things, maybe that.
Yeah, it has to be needs-based, but possibly.
yeah.
That seems to be one of the things that's important to how that trust is set up.
Even there, I could perhaps see, but Nora's always want to hear from Nora when she has her.
This community service team memo, I was reading about, through a revolving fund that they have, and to ensure that the 60+ population continue to pay little to no fees for their programs. Now that seemed very attractive to me, the little to no fees. I just didn't know this revolving fund. If it could be a little more clarification on that.
Sure. So our recreation revolving fund, we turn back a sizable amount, I would say, back to the general fund every year. So some of those funds, if we were to be together in a center, again, can support a potential new center, whether we're on the same revolving fund or separate revolving funds. They're just ideas. And I can tell you that several other centers, including North Reading, who we met with today at the center, they also have a program revolving fund. So currently we don't even have a program revolving fund. So a place where we could have a senior pay a nominal fee, and then it just offsets the cost to pay the vendor who does the program, the yoga instructor, or having that fund that they pay $5 for their meal and it offsets the cost of the vendor for the meal. So just having simple systems like that put into place probably in the near future would be good, just so we can get up with the times a little bit. But for the revolving fund, if we were together in the same spot, potentially the revolving fund could support, again, the building. So, and we could offer more programs in the building and make more money. So I see it as a potential win-win.
Yeah, I always thought that the fact that rec makes money, is a great resource, and why not invest more back into rec? Because I know it's limited. There was a decision, I guess, a while back as far as that you just couldn't keep the money in the rec account. I think that's why it goes back to the general fund.
Yeah, it's actually supposed to balance. It's supposed to represent the costs. And it's just basically, it's working capital. It's because you need the money at a certain point in time and you don't necessarily have it. It just kind of balances out. You're not supposed to be earning a profit. You're supposed to be covering your costs.
Just too good.
Can I jump in? Just a quick question. So on that note, Mark, I understand what Jen is talking about. We obviously renew the revolving funds every year at town meeting. I'm assuming those have certain criteria for what the money can be spent on within the definition. So yeah, we'd have to obviously look at the scope of those funds and whether or not you could expand the scope to cover, if you went into a community center and you started to run programs out of there, is it still focused on recreation, or how would you then recast that? So I think those are and I don't know the answer to those questions, by the way. I'm just saying that to your point, Jenna, it's an interesting idea. I'm sure somebody more talented on the development of those fundings could guide us. Certainly an interesting option in terms of being able to use that. And to Nora, just to your question, so these are revolving funds that are set up by the town to allow different departments to basically, run during the year and, basically pay their bills and take money in. And then at the end of the year, to Mark's point, they're really not supposed to make profit per se, but the money then goes back into the general fund unless they need to be used for something specific within that fund's scope.
Anyone else? Okay. Now, as far as, input to John, is there any further input as far as the executive summary?
So my plan, John, is to finish the rest of the report. I'll take, the other comments that I've received and try to go through the rest of it over the next week. I did make a commitment to then try to work with Ron on taking it, and putting it into a presentation format. And again, I have been down for the count, so I haven't had a chance to do that. And then also to, once we do agree with this and we can summarize it in a little newsletter, I think that would be the other piece that we were talking about. So those are still open actions on my plate. But if anybody has any feedback specifically on the executive summary, I did try to address the specific comments that this group had on that piece in what I put out this afternoon.
John, I can help you with the newsletter side as well too. Bring that up.
Now that we've finished with that, and I don't think there's any vote to be taken, is there any other item? I didn't know, I didn't want to put you on the spot, Mark,
Oh,
but
anytime. I live that. So a few things. One, we had talked about reporting to the select board, kind of the next activity. I'm wondering if we could think about that for March 21st, if that would fit. Does that give enough time to kind of complete the report and the presentation you're talking about?
Yeah, I think so. As long as I don't get knocked down again, I should be good.
Okay, I think that would be great. And there's room on the agenda. I just was working on the agenda, so that would be great. We also talked about discussing what is the kind of next steps for the group. And I think what we talked about was more, so finishing this exactly as we're talking about, reporting to the select board, communicating out to the community. We do have town meeting coming up, and I think it would be appropriate for a report to be generated by Recalc, which is essentially what we're talking about here as well. So that could be included in town meeting, which I think is probably roughly that same time frame of probably have it by mid-March, have it available. So it goes into the select board packet, and then it could also get printed into the town warrant, into the warrant report, which would be great. If that works for everybody, I think that would be awesome. The discussion of missions. So the select board hasn't tackled this yet. I think we need to. I think maybe that 321 meeting might be the right time for the board to tackle it, because you'll kind of bring in this culmination of activities. It may also be that by 321 we know further where we are with the 17 Harnden Street property in terms of coming to an agreement. And then assuming that we do, the next steps from there are going to be hire the project manager, hire an architect, bring back some options, select board, go through that, vote on which to pursue, bring that forward to a special town meeting, which likely would be, so let me back up one step. If you go through that process, the kind of architect, all that work probably could culminate around summertime, which would not be a good time for a town meeting. So probably September plus or minus would make more sense for that. And then assuming town meeting approves of that activity, you need 35 days before you can have a special election, which is what would be required. So I'm kind of just thinking out loud, maybe that's late October, maybe early November, more likely in terms of time frame. So what activities would take place if the board comes to an agreement with 17 Harnden, and does Recalc play a role in that? Is it a different group? I think that's what the select board should talk about. But I think that as we've discussed, Recalc, you take a look at the mission statement. Charge of Recalc is to explore the current and future needs of the community, initiate planning for a potential new senior community center in town that will focus on residents age 60 plus and possibly other members of the community. So I think that the select board owes you feedback on what would be next. So I think that's right. So hang on, I'm checking off my list here. 321, discussion of mission. Communications to the community, town meeting report. Sorry, that's my list. Thanks.
okay. So I'll turn to John Sasso. Is the timeline? Can you and Ron work?
Yeah, no, I need to finish this report. I got to get it off my table. So it's been sitting on me for the last 3 weeks. So I'm if folks are comfortable with the executive summary, I feel a lot more comfortable going through the rest of the details. I think the focus that everybody had really was on that summary. So I'd like to think that we captured the essence, but I do have some more comments and questions to go through, and I will get that done. And then my perspective is I can take what I have and I can send it to Ron, and I think Ron can work his magic and you know, create the overall PowerPoint. And then the easy thing for me is to take the report once we kind of agree and throw it into a little newsletter as a presentation. And then I mean, I think from that, it's very easy to make it a little report to town meeting or anybody else. But I'm pretty confident I can get that done in the next week or two. If I don't get it done in the next week or two, it'll be a problem because my son's actually off for 2 weeks in March and might be going away somewhere. So I need to get it done in the next 2 weeks. So that'll be my objective.
Okay, and do we see the executive summary being the focus of the slideshow, or?
So actually, so my original thought, and Ron and I can talk some more about this, but my original thought was the slideshow actually should be the summary report itself. So there are pieces in the summary report about the needs and about the differentiation between a senior versus a community center. And I think we need to flush that stuff out and put that back in front of people again, from our perspective, and use that to highlight the recommendations that we've made. So I think it's, so the presentation is more than just the executive. So just so we're all on the same page, the summary report, which is 7 or 8 pages or whatever it may be, that gets distilled into a slide deck of maybe 10 or 12 slides or something like that. And in that is the primary sets of summary recommendations, but then also it goes through, you know, details about the needs that we've identified, and some of the other things that we were chartered with. So I think it kind of, it's the intent, my thought at least, was to bring it together, as Mark said, and kind of wrap it up and put it back in front of the select board and said, here's everything we've done. Here's the results of what we've accomplished. Here's the information, kind of, it's in your hands. How do you want us to proceed?
As far as select board presentation, I hear you, John, so that sounds like a, you know, good plan. But as far as the whole thing with the appendices and everything else, do you see that going in like the select board packet?
Yes, I see it in the select board packet, I see it
And
on the
the top-
website, I see it in the senior center, the Pleasant Street Center,
How
I
about
see it at the
town
library.
meeting,
So town meeting,
or just,
so my gut is that the smaller piece is perfect for town meeting,
Okay,
and then refer
that's-
them to the website.
because people usually don't read, unfortunately.
Yeah, so actually, great point. So when thinking a bit about the PowerPoint, I think everything you said is correct. I would suggest using some pictures and graphics to jazz it, so that we are going to get the readership. They are going to take away the right points from it. And they are going to get answers to their key questions. And if they want to go deeper, great. We've got tons of data for
That's why I'm going to give it to Ron.
Okay.
Meet again before the select board?
Huh?
Want to meet again before the select board?
Oh, yeah.
Before the select board on the 21st?
Oh,
We
you
wanna
want to
meet
meet again? That was my, yes, I'm sorry. I was thinking that we would, if we want to preview all.
Yeah, I think we should. I'm not sure what my schedule is for those first 2 weeks in March, but I would say we should just schedule a meeting and hope for the best, unfortunately. Even if I'm not local, I can certainly join in as well. But yeah, I think we should definitely schedule a meeting. I was actually thinking the 15th, which is the week before. By then I'll, you know, actually, when is Mark, remind us, when is the material due in the select board packet? It's like the Tuesday before, or is it the Thursday before?
so it's the Wednesday before.
Wednesday before, I got it right.
Yeah. Tuesday is
Um,
safer. Let's do Tuesday. There's a little discussion going on about Fridays at the moment as to whether or not they count.
So So,
Tuesday is safest. So the Tuesday
so-
before would be the 13th.
right, so John, do you want to do it before that? Do you want to do it the week before the 8th? And that way people, you get an opportunity to see it before we put it in the select board packet.
I think that would be the way to go.
Does that give you enough time?
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna get my stuff done in the next week, but, and I'm sure Ron can work his magic. That gives us a full 2 weeks, right?
You're thinking, sorry, the 8th of March?
Yeah, because next week is the 1st, so it's
Right.
2 weeks. So basically, I need to get this done this next week and then give Ron, a good solid weekend to go through. Yeah, I'll get it done.
Thanks,
In the
John.
middle of my son's in a play this weekend, so I'll be in the back row typing away, so. no, kidding. Don't tell him that, he'll be really upset at me.
This is being recorded, you know that,
I
right?
know, yeah, but he doesn't watch this channel.
So go for it. Is there any chance the 8th at 6:30 would work? There's a finance committee is meeting at 7 and this is budget review. I'm not sure which. Oh, that's Cato too. Oh, my gosh. Oh, boy. Wow.
I can meet.
How about Thursday, the 9th?
So we have Winterfest on the Common is Thursday the 9th.
That would be, you need to do that early then, before y'all like start,
Not hear that either.
Well, what time is Winterfest?
5 o'clock I wrote down. Is that right?
It's 5 to 9.
Yeah.
Oh.
We can meet earlier in the day if that works.
I could,
I could do it.
Or
During the day.
do it so it works for you, John, I think is.
During the day, well, I'm just saying, if we can't, if we're not gonna do Wednesday because we get that, during the day on Thursday would work. I can carve out an hour. It depends on when other folks are available.
4 o'clock.
Yeah, I could probably do around 4 o'clock.
I can do
Michael's suggesting 4 o'clock.
I can do 4.
A lot of thumbs up.
Yep, Nora, yep.
Yeah.
Don, does that work for you?
Yes,
And John Parsons, okay, I
Cool.
can make it work. Walk the dog a little early.
so it's the 9th or the 8th.
The 9th.
9th, Thursday the 9th.
Oh, I'm not gonna be here. I thought it was March 8th, sorry. But you don't need me here.
One more time. Thursday, the 9th at 4 o'clock. Okay. That's our next scheduled meeting. Is there any other business before I entertain a motion to adjourn? Seeing none, I'll entertain that motion.
Motion to
Oh,
adjourn.
can we, are you gonna do the meeting all in person or Zoom only? Just because I won't be here.
Right.
So I want to make sure that you guys can get set up.
I think Zoom only.
Why don't we just do Zoom only, if that makes it easier?
All right, and I can give you the login and password, Mark. That's cool. Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you for asking
Thank
that.
you.
Try again, Mike.
Move to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Second. And since it's not debatable. Okay. Nora,
Present.
okay, John Parsons,
Yes.
Ron Assini,
Yes.
John Sasso,
Yes.
Michael Colton,
Yes.
Mark Doxer.
Yes.
And John O'Neill, yes. Thank you all.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.